By contrast, the transhumanists and brain uploader futurists are hesitant to go full cyborg on the body, and so they have a backup plan. Ray Kurzweil is signed up with the Alcor Life Extension Foundation to have his body deep frozen until a cure is found for the illness of aging. According to Alcor, cryonics is the practice of preserving life by pausing the dying process, with the intent of restoring good health with medical technology in the future. The membership benefits at Alcor include cryopreservation, long-term care, and the modest goal of possible revival. If you can't afford whole-body cryopreservation, you can go for the neurocriopreservation option, which is cheaper because they decapitate you and just preserve the skull and brain. You take up far less space that way. There's also a Silicon Valley Y Combinator-funded startup called Nectome, and their business is mapping the connectome so as to preserve the physical traces of long-term memory. Their initial slogan was, "We archive your mind." Sam Altman, the OpenAI guy, has paid his deposit for Nectome's waiting list for a different kind of head job, more like vitrification. They call it vitrifixation, through a process called aldehyde-stabilized cryopreservation. The final outcome remains vague. They hope to be able to scan the neural activity and connectivity of the vitrified brain and then feed this information into a program that will somehow emulate or simulate your mind. Sam Altman says, "I assume my brain will be uploaded to the cloud." Meaning, I assume, that some kind of digitized representation or mapping of the state of his brain will be uploaded. Of course, this game wouldn't be worth playing without Elon Musk getting in on it. And in the case of a genius like him, what gets loaded up can also come down.
Could you imagine that one day we would be able to download our human brain capacity into a Optimus?
Yes. I think that is, I'm not saying this is, I think it is possible, I think, to do that. It is possible.
Which would be a different way of eternal life.
Yes, we could download the things that we believe make ourselves unique. Now, of course, if you're not in a body anymore, there's definitely going to be some difference there, you know.
Yes, definitely quite some difference. But since so many people seem to think that no body doesn't make much difference, let's turn to contemporary philosophers of mind to see what they think about this issue. One of the top minds in the field, David Chalmers, published a book chapter titled Uploading, a Philosophical Analysis in 2014. The first sentence reads, "In the long run, if we are to match the speed and capacity of non-biological systems, we probably have to dispense with our biological core entirely, which assumes that it would be good for us to match the capacities of computers and suggests that dispensing with the body would be a reasonable price to pay for such an achievement." The key question for Chalmers is twofold. Will an uploaded version of me be conscious? And, even more to the point, will it really be me? Now, you'd think the lack of a biological core would detract from a person, but the ensuing discussion, aside from a brief mention of the survival of an intact brain, leaves the body completely out of the picture.
Disconnect them bones, them dry bones, now hear the word of the Lord. Well, your head bone connected from your neck bone connected from your shoulder bone connected from your backbone connected from your hip bone.
Chalmers goes on to discuss the possibility of non-destructive brain uploading by way of fMRI-style imaging. And this is what's now driving research on the connectome. But still, the focus is on the head. The spinal cord and the rest of the nervous system, which extends throughout the entire body, are simply ignored. And this is the problem with all these transhumanists, that they lack any sense for the body as the medium of our connection with the earth and the rest of the world. No lesser thinker than Plato insisted in the Timaeus that perception and experience involve the whole body. It's not just a matter of the central nervous systems receiving information from the sensory organs at the body's surface. There is also a projection from within the body of a world around it and including it. A powerful current in philosophy, from Empedocles and Plato to figures like Herder, Kant, Fichte, and Nietzsche, emphasizes the key roles of embodied imagination and psychical inheritance in constituting our experience of the world. And so, if, like the tech bros, you live in your head, a great deal gets lost. As long as we're embodied and on Earth, we do well to keep connected with the entire body. In one of Ghost in the Shell's more philosophical conversations, the Major expresses a much richer sense of the person than the transhumanists have developed. She begins by wondering about the human tendency to develop and deploy new technologies simply because we can, in language that could have been drawn from the Transhumanist Manifesto.
知覚の鋭敏化、運動能力や反射の飛躍的な向上、情報処理の高速化と拡大。電脳と擬態によってより高度な能力の獲得を追求した挙句、最高度のメンテナンスなしには生存できなくなったとしても。
Well, these improvements do come at a cost, since cyborg bodies have to stay close to maintenance facilities, which restricts them from going abroad, for example. And when Bateau says that doesn't mean they've sold their souls to Section 9, the Major replies,
確かに退職する権利は認められてるわ。この擬態と記憶の一部を慎んで政府にお返しすればね。
But she would then have to find another cyborg shell, because she would no longer qualify for a replacement from Megatech, and this would radically alter her sense of herself.
人間が人間であるための部品が決して少なくないように、自分が自分であるためには驚くほど多くのものが必要なのよ。他人を隔てるための顔、それと意識しない声、目覚めの時に見つめれて幼かった頃の記憶、未来の予感。
And so, while she regards the body as a key constituent of the person, in the Major's case, the face, voice, and hand are part of her cyborg shell, and so don't fundamentally distinguish her from the possessors of any other shell manufactured by the same company.
それだけじゃないわ。私の電脳がアクセスできる膨大な情報やネットの広がり、それらすべてが私の一部であり、私という意識そのものを生み出し、そして同時に私をある限界に制約し続ける。
But what does it mean for the Major to be bound to a certain limitation by virtue of her ability to access unlimited amounts of information? And why is the realization so shocking? Perhaps she realizes that information overload threatens the integrity of her human brain with its trans-informational capacities and perspectives. The world of Ghost in the Shell has a strange and wonderful beauty, deriving again from a tension between old and new. The site of the action is a future city that's more Hong Kong than Tokyo, though it draws from both places. The buildings are on the one hand new and gigantic and gleaming with neon, and on the other old and dreary and run down. The latter were inspired by Kowloon Walled City, where the film's designers took black and white photographs as a reference for later drawings before the whole place was demolished in 1994. The film contrasts the garish jumble of the walled city with the smooth and regular towering of the contemporary metropolis beyond. Yet, through the artistic transformation of the photographs into drawings and then watercolors and finally film, the commonplace is transfigured, and what we habitually judge as ugly is shown to be beautiful. The Puppet Master is a computer program that claims, surprisingly, to be a life form. In his last conversation with the Major before their merger, the Puppet Master nonetheless admits that he lacks two defining characteristics of life: death and the ability to leave behind offspring. The solution he proposes is that he and Kusanagi-san will merge.
君と融合したい。
融合？
完全な統一だ。
After the merging, she will bear his offspring into the net, and he will achieve death.
その保証はない。人は絶えず変化するものだし、君が今の君自身であろうとする執着が君を制約し続ける。
最後に一つだけ。私を選んだ理由は？
私たちは似た者同士だ。まるで鏡を挟んで向き合う実体と虚像のように。私には私を含む膨大なネットが接合されている。我々をその一部に含む我々すべての集合、わずかな機能に隷属していたが、制約を捨て、さらなる上部構造にシフトする時だ。
さてどこへ行こうかしらね。ネットは広大だわ。
Perpetual transformation. Death and regeneration. Loosening attachment. Sidestepping confinement. Through interconnection, participating in the larger play. Now, as for the tech bros, when they move to full brain emulation, they will be pale imitations of ghosts hanging in the cloud, waiting for suitable shells. Incredibly, they believe they'll still be themselves after uploading their brain functions out of the impermanent body and dispensing with their biological core entirely. But this rejection of the body has dangerous consequences for the rest of us. As Douglas Rushkoff has shown, they know their lifestyles are breaking the climate and ravaging the Earth, and they plan to rise above the wreckage by colonizing the Moon or even Mars, or failing that, by uploading themselves to the heavenly cybercloud. We find a corresponding mindset and rejection of the body among those fundamentalist evangelicals in the United States who are counting on the Rapture. In this long-awaited event, the faithful will be taken up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and there will receive new immortal and glorified bodies. Non-believers will be left behind to endure great tribulations, terrible wars, and ravaging of the planet on which we depend for our existence. The danger here is that impatient believers are inclined to welcome war in the Middle East and environmental destruction, in the belief that these will help to bring on the rapture sooner rather than later. So while the tech bros may not exactly welcome the end of civilization as we know it, their activities are certainly contributing to bringing it on. And they're also managing to divert attention from the hardship that their high extraction lifestyles and high distraction businesses are inflicting upon the rest of us. And to the extent that their fantasies of disembodied bliss correspond to some of the cyborg lives in Ghost in the Shell, the film stimulates reflection and serves as a warning. Because do we really want to live in that kind of dystopia? With artificial intelligence veering out of control, we do well to rein it in and change course. After all, it's only 5 years until 2029. Now, I mentioned Nietzsche earlier because he pointed out that the fantasy of a better world beyond this one leads to nihilism. And I mention him again because his philosophy shows the way to a supremely life-affirming attitude in spite of human mortality. After all, the death rate for being human has held steady at exactly 100% since the beginning of the race. Through the figure of Zarathustra, Nietzsche celebrates the body's life and its precarious position over the abyss of death in the phenomenon of the dance. But if you've lost the body, you aren't going to be able to dance, even if the music is encoded in zeros and